Sorry, this is something I was going to give during the panel, but then we got a little bit squeezed for time during that. It's our founding, one of our founding purposes for Universal Peace Federation that we should promote the role of interfaith dialogue in conjunction with political dialogue as two dimensions of a decision-making process. That there should be at least these two elements. And this interfaith dialogue can also include civil society and various other institutions of expressions of people's idealism. Can we go to the next one? Naomi. Next slide. Thank you. So in this slide, it says the existing United Nations structure composed of national representatives may be regarded as a Congress where the interests of each member state is represented. However, I submit that serious consideration should be given to forming a religious assembly or a council of religious representatives within the structure of the United Nations. This assembly or council would consist of respected spiritual leaders, such as religion, culture, and education. And in a sense, it makes a counterbalance to the political dimension, in that the political dimension has to always be accountable to electorates, quite naturally. And therefore, they are representatives who have to balance with their electorate, the various needs of their country in relation also to other countries. But there are times when the expression of idealism by an electorate sometimes is not the highest in terms of our religious understanding, our moral understanding. If we think of the popularity of the anti-immigration vote now in the UK, I don't think that's a particularly high moral standing. In a sense, for this kind of issue, we also need the accountability of religious leaders and their sensitivity to a higher calling or a higher ideal. So they are accountable to their conscience and to their scriptural understanding, and also to their experience of their inner faith. Next one. So the mission of the Interreligious Council is, in a sense, to debate, to dialogue, to draw on the scriptural wisdom of each tradition, which largely is the same, apart from particular faith statements particularly relating to the founders of each particular faith. So this would be a place to dialogue and to promote understanding of the religious dimension of tensions between faiths. But it also calls on another element. But can we go to the next slide, please? So through this religious council, then there can be a way of expressing the higher ideal, particularly this golden rule of treating others the way you would want to be treated yourself. So the sense of one religion, one region of the world, actually raising the aspirations and the need for development in other areas of the world as their own calling. The idea that it is in my interest as a person living in the UK, which is relatively prosperous and in most parts, to use a religious term, blessed. It has good levels of prosperity and many things that other countries would really hope for that they could accomplish in the next 20, 30, even 40 years. So we have so many advantages, but it is within our nature, or the nature of keeping prosperity, is that we have to share it. That's a religious dimension, a religious term and concept. But in order to maintain prosperity and maintain the standard of idealism, we have to share what we have and make good partnerships and cooperation with with other areas of the world, with other peoples, and to raise the consciousness of the suffering of other peoples. So, can I have the next slide? So to complement, these are the benefits that a religious council could have, countering extremism, ensuring development aid is used well, to be a chamber in which these ideals can be expressed and articulated by people who are influential and respected. And also to care for minorities, to care for those who are vulnerable, and to be a chamber in which that ideal can be expressed, and to hold the politicians in the General Assembly to the same ideal. Next one. So even within religions there are splits, there are differences, there are denominations, and so many also splits in which there also needs to be much dialogue and coming to understanding. But when living for a greater purpose, those differences become much smaller. So when someone splits off from their own church or denomination, or if it's a Buddhist group, they split off by a small understanding or tenet of understanding. Actually, those kind of issues compared to the need of the bottom billion, or the need of the people who are starving, almost 1 billion people who do not have food security. Those issues are so small that this becomes a good place to dialogue and find common ground. It also provides a model of how spiritual and religious groups can rise above differences and work together for common good, that is saying. Next, these are the various steps that have been taken already. Particularly the Philippines were strongly promoting this under Senator de Venecia in the early 2000s. And they made some very good steps. The UN, as you probably all know, founded in the aftermath of the Second World War, to have all nations on board, had to not have the inclusion of religion or God or so on within the constitution of the UN, so that all people and both communist and democratic nations could be in one place, one venue, one forum altogether. So this kind of progress was actually quite revolutionary, and step by step is making increasing progress. But it's a need for, particularly when we have religious tensions leading to wars, the need for this kind of dialogue forum is very important. And the World Interfaith Forum week is a new one, but the first week of every February. It's a very good way of promoting, I think, King Abdullah of Jordan, if I've got it right. He was very much promoting that, and still is really promoting it because of the tensions that he sees in his region. But it's a very good way of coming together. The next one, please. This is one of the examples. And next one. So these are the various areas that could perform a role. One aspect of religion which is very important in coming to establish a peace and understanding between different cultures, between different nations, between different peoples, is calling for forgiveness of enemies, of taking the enmity from your enemy, not trying to kill your enemy, but trying to remove the enmity by serving, by loving, by caring even when it's difficult. And that way of forgiveness prevents the cycle of revenge. Revenge can go on for generations. The families, the tribes that have been in war for hundreds of years. It's something that there are many traditional rules in many places. I was speaking to an Eritrean professor recently, talking about traditional rules, traditional law in Eritrea, which many of them were about preventing revenge and how to have an arbiter who would arbitrate, who is respected, an elder who would arbitrate between two people when there was a conflict. And maybe there would be a payment of money. But this way was to prevent this cycle of revenge, which can go on and on and on. And let's go to the next one. So to promote tolerance, extremism, and reconciliation, countering extremism, etc. Next one. And we've had a number of consultations to consider various challenges that need to be taken part. These are very important, particularly representation geographically, religiously, and next one. Also, to have a fair distribution of men and women, and young and old, so that they actually do represent the world that they come from. And next one. So, and next one. So, I know as UPF we try to support a number of days within the UN calendar to promote various issues. And next one. These are also partners that we've developed. Just in conclusion, then, this forms a dialogue and another way of holding politicians to account, particularly if a respected spiritual leader sees that something is unpopular but right. Somehow we have to have that argument, and we have to have that counterbalance of dialogue. If something is unpopular but right in a moral or a spiritual or scriptural viewpoint, then there has to be someone who is in a position to argue for it and to make also discussions and alliances with politicians who have a strong faith. Because not all politicians are just egotistical and driven by their own personal agendas. There are many who have great ideals and are driven by those ideals and can also form alliances with a group or alliance of people from this particular proposed chamber. So I just wanted to explain this purpose and this idea for another expression of the idealism of humanity. Thank you.